why does your large scale event need a digital check-in station? Let's find out. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about who we are. So my name is Justin Blau. I'm the director of education here at Social Tables, and my job is to help sort of spread the word about social tables and also to help event professionals use technology to have a more seamless planning process and help events just go better, right? We're in the industry of connecting people together. Um, so Joe Meehan, who is nice enough to join me today, is someone in the events industry whom I really look up to. He's the director of event technology at the Milken Institute. He's over a decade of experience just at that organization and years more just across the events industry. So someone who I've personally learned a lot from, and someone who I'm really excited to be working with today. And so Joe oversees a team of constituent involvement and manages events all around the globe. And you've also, Joe, you've been with Social Tables almost as long as I have. You've basically been a Social Tables customer since basically the very beginning, right?
That's true. Yeah. We did an event in 2012 that was a large, dinner seating thing, and we had some pressure points. And while it was a success, we said, what else is out there? And so I did some research, and that's how I came across Social Tables.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And that was at the National Portrait Gallery, right?
Yeah, that's correct. National Portrait Gallery. Yeah. So.
Nice. Well, I know I blabbered on about you a little bit. Is there anything else you wanted to maybe share about yourself or?
No, let's just dive in.
Awesome. All right, so let me get over to the next slide here. So the agenda, if you've ever attended a webinar from Social Tables, and I recognize quite a few names out of the 50 of us who are on today. I recognize a few of you. Hey, Claire. Hey, Courtney. Hey, Deborah. All right, a lot of names I recognize here. And so if you've ever attended a webinar with me, you know that we are obsessed with providing agendas. So you can see the agenda up on the screen. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we're really going to talk all about check-in. And we're going to start with covering the why, right? So why does your event check-in need technology? We're going to talk about the what, so different tools out there, and then the why, right? And the how. So we're going to talk a lot sort of about the full cycle, right? Different reasons why we would need check-in, how we can do it, what's important about it. And if you have questions as we go, use that chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. Already seen a few people who have chatted in. We're going to answer questions at the end. So we'll save some time and answer some questions towards the end. And use Twitter. Right? If you're one of those people that likes to tweet, you can tweet at Laura, who's my community manager, happens to be sitting right next to me. Say hi, Laura.
Hello.
So tweet her. You can use the hashtag AskST, so Ask Social Tables, and use that chat window. So why does your event check-in station even need technology? I figured instead of sitting down and saying, hey guys, this is exactly why you need it, I figured I would maybe share a couple anecdotes. All right, I like to think in stories. So I stay in hotels at least 10 nights a month, right? And I would say nearly every single time when I'm checking into these hotels in the early afternoon or the late afternoon, I walk past the meeting rooms on my way to the elevator, and almost without a doubt, there's going to be that, an occupied meeting room, and there'll be, a table set out front. There'll be one or two people kind of sitting back there, maybe looking a little bored, having, pieces of paper kind of strewn over the place and some leftover name tags. And, that's kind of the process, right? There's always some folks sitting behind a registration table outside of that meeting room. And then in the morning, when I'm on my way to my meetings and the conferences are getting started, I'll see those same people, all right? Couple cups of coffee in them, but now they're standing behind that table with a line of people, right? And everyone's trying to get through that check-in station, and they'll be fumbling through pieces of paper, kind of going like this, asking someone to spell their name over and over, usually just using a printed off Excel file. Does any of that sound familiar? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably all of us have been on both sides of that table, basically being that person who's stuck checking folks in and also being the person who's waiting in line. And on another anecdote, I was actually attending an event earlier this year, and I just kind of went up to the check-in table, and they had the guest list just sitting out on that table. So as I was talking to the gentleman who was letting me in the door, I could see the list of everyone coming, right? I could see who was a VIP. I could see that I was not a VIP. And I could see all the people that were getting special treatment, and I wasn't one of them. So it wasn't really the best first impression for me when I could kind of see a list and say, oh, these are all the nice people, all right? Or these are all the people who are VIPs. And I wonder why I'm not there yet. So that's sort of the first impression, and that's the old school way of doing things. That's the traditional way. Technology can help us get around that, right? So when Joe and I were we were planning this webinar, we were going through and we were kind of chatting about different overall experiences, like how have we gotten in, what has it been like, kind of waiting in line and seeing those people stumbling through paperwork. And my name's hard to pronounce, so people always get it spelled wrong. So I'm standing there, like, identifying myself numerous times. And Joe, do you remember what you said that kind of reminds you of?
Yeah, so it reminds you of like when you go to the bank or the DMV, you're just waiting in this long line, and it's what people dread, and it's also probably not the best first impression as people come to your event. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they put on their tuxedo and they took a taxi across town. They're ready to get inside and start the event. So I stole this line from you and I put it right in there. But if you're using paper, it's time to upgrade.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, like I always say, like paper is passé. Excel is a spreadsheet. It is not your database. And the second you print something out, it becomes outdated, right? Somebody's already made a change, and somebody's canceled, or somebody's adding something. But I think it's important to really kind of embrace your space. You use Wi-Fi and mobility as a tool and be your friend. It really shows that you care about the experience of your attendee as they show up. So you don't have to have that long line of people as they check in. You can have multiple places to check in, and because it's Wi-Fi and with the app, you're all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so what tools? This is going to be the what part. So which tools can you use to digitize your check-in station? There are a lot of great tools out there for event professionals. So there's social tables check-in. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to let Joe do all the talking about that. But there's Event Farm. So Event Farm is actually a DC-based company. So social tables in DC, they're not too far away from us. And they're a great platform for doing invitations and registration, custom ticketing. It's a little more registration and ticketing focused, but it's a great option out there. The other one, which I'm sure everyone's probably nodding their head saying, oh yeah, Eventbrite. I've probably used them before. So they're a free registration and ticketing app. Social tables, we use that for our social tables socials, which are events that we hold in various cities around the country. I've used it in other job functions before when I've been planning events and selling tickets for them. So it's definitely something used sort of internationally. And Joe, you're a Cvent user, right?
Yes, we are a Cvent enterprise client, so we do all our online registration via Cvent.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, let's take a quick peek at social tables here. All right. Right. So I'm not going to run through and show you how everything works, but I want to show you some of the advantages of having check-in available. Right. So what we can do here is look at our guest list, and this is live, by the way, so I can show me. I can move back and forth. This is my real iPad. So the first thing is when we're using social tables, you can kind of have your entire team set up. It doesn't matter what floor you're on. It doesn't matter where you are on property or on site during this event. We can have all of our folks connected here through this app, right? Just on an iPad or an iPhone. And it's going to be really easy for your associate who's sitting at the door here to go in and say, oh, what's your name, sir? Oh, you're Jesse. Here, let's find you, right? You want to check someone in. It's that easy. If this is an event where you're checking folks out as well, look, it's really that easy. we made a mistake, we can always come back and edit it, right? Just by kind of swiping to the left, we can go in and change someone's names if we needed to. But what I think is really important here is, we get to see who they are and why they're there, right? So if I pull up, from the top there, for my associate, if I'm the meeting planner, I want the person checking in, the CEO of a company, like this guy right here, Don. Like, I want that person up front to know that this guy is a CEO, right? I want him escorted to his table. Maybe he has an allergy. Maybe Brittany here is getting access to the silver lounge, right? Maybe Justin needs an interpreter. All these different things we can have here and be able to pass that info on to our teams, right? And especially when you're working a large event, you have to make judgment calls during it. And that's where having this information along the bottom can really come in handy, because as your teams around the building or around the event are checking folks in, you're actually going to see your real-time update at the bottom there with a number of folks checked into the event, right? So it's a really easy to use tool. I just trained you on it in about 1 minute. So training your staff is going to be really easy, especially if you pick up a volunteer last minute, right? It's going to take you 2 seconds to say, hey, how do you spell a name? Here's how you search for it, just like that. So it makes it really easy for us to bring on new users sort of last second. Now, I know I'm the tech guy here, but I'm going to hand things over to Joe. So I'm going to let Joe kind of take it away here and talk a little bit about what you've done in your organization and your experiences with check-in.
Sure. So, I mean, we had some issues at previous events, and we just kind of identified, ways we wanted to make improvements. And we wanted to kind of use this case as an example. In April of this year, it's called the Global Gourmet Games. We have about 400 seats. There's 34 tables. Each table is a country, and they're a team name. So it is a large event. As you can see the picture on the slide, there's a lot of tables and a lot of room, and we want to maximize, make sure we have everybody seated. So what we wanted to do is, we go through and not only for digital check-in, but I also need for pre-planning. So if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see what we see in social tables as far as kind of the layout. So I'm able to design the room, edit as needed. It's visually easy for me to see the room and where people are going. Clearly, I import the people in from Excel or whatever system you have. I can toggle the names on and off. All of this helps me ahead of time to kind of understand and plan and know where people are going. And I can see the table numbers and all that stuff. And I can even share that layout with the venue, which is very helpful as well. But when it really comes to check-in, I always like to say, all of the decisions that I need to make happen within 30 minutes. So if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see, and we'll start talking about what are the things I need to worry about. There's really, so I used, on-site check-in with iPad minis, which are great because they're smaller than the actual iPads, and they're perfect for the hand size, but you can still see everything. I get real-time updates across all the iPads. So if I have 5 iPads or 5 iPad minis doing check-ins, they're connected, right? So, and the nice thing about it is if I'm also on my laptop and I'm making real-time changes, so if I need to move somebody from a table or something like that, or I find out, and I'm sure no one can relate to this, but when someone shows up and says, oh, I brought a guest, right? Or even worse is when someone shows up and they didn't RSVP, I can make those real-time changes, and it pushes that information out directly to the app and social table, so I can see that stuff in real time. The other handy things about that is, check-in is really the key word. I'm trying to make those updates in real time, and then also see that information as well. So if you go to kind of the next slide, we'll talk about some of the things that really help us for check-in. I get notifications. I can set up alerts for when my VIPs arrive, whether it's a text message or SMS, and or send an email, which is really, really helpful for us because, or anybody, when your VIP shows up, I always like to say I want to reduce the physical clutter at the registration area. As everybody knows, not only is there's the once that line to check in, but then there's that once somebody's checked in, everybody kind of mingles and talks, and you might greet people there, or you're waiting there to see who's showing up, and then doing all that talking, and that whole area becomes just a clutter. So you can have the iPads all over the place and do check-ins, and then you can send alerts and have the people come and grab them and be notified. It really is a good high-touch point where you can sit there and so if you're CEO or somebody who you want to meet, you get an alert that they're checking in right away. You can go greet them and automatically have, oh, come on in, we'll bring you into the cocktail reception. It's that high-touch type of thing. I think that's really important to be able to do that thing, especially for the VIPs. And it's helping you to manage your event, but it's also a better experience for your attendee. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about some of the things, the advantages of digital check-in. Obviously, it's simple to check in somebody. You saw what it was look like. It was easier. It's easy to train your volunteers. It's probably easier than you have to sit there and go, here's an alphabetical list, or here's a list by company, or various things. You've reduced that clipboard, look, and like I said, as soon as you print that Excel sheet out or whatever, that becomes passé. That's outdated by the time you print it. But you also have, for an event planner, I get real-time information right then and there, so I can see, I can just go to one of the iPads and say, how many people have checked in, because they're all connected. I don't have to run it and do tallies. I don't have to try to put everything together. And the nice thing about it is, and as you saw on the screen, there are some notes in there that were like, what do I want to see as someone checks in? So not only, it's the table name or the table number, but there might be some VIP notes like, oh, and I know you're bringing in guests. Is your date here with you? And we noticed we have diet restrictions and things like that. That's important that sometimes you just can't have you can't have printed, or you can't have updated right away. To have that on your iPad and see that, and it really does make that experience of check-in a lot more personal. But again, like all of these things happen within the 30 minutes of somebody checking in. It's important that you have that information to make decisions. So if you go to the next slide, I always like to say, event planners live in that crunch time. And so you have to decide, is it time to start? And anybody who's done a large event, some of the questions that you always ask are, is my head table all here? You don't want to have, you might sit there and think, oh, I think I've got a lot of people checked in, but I don't really have an accurate number. With digital check-in, you have an accurate number of how many people are checked in, and also specifically who is checked in. So, you might have a 400-person event, and I might have 390 people checked in, but if my 10 people who are at the front table have not checked in yet, I might hold off on opening up the ballroom for another 10 minutes, because I don't want to start the program and then have my VIPs being walked up, to the very front table, or have the program started and there's an empty space at that table. I think that's, a great, plus to have, and it's great to be able to have that information right away. Like I said, all of these things, it seems like a lot of work for a 30-minute window of, just before the event and everything, but really that was why we wanted to find this, is because we wanted to eliminate that guessing. We wanted to eliminate, all the back and forth. Like I said, I've actually sat with a laptop and I can make real-time changes. I have people who come up or they email me like, oh, I'm coming and I'm bringing somebody. And the other good thing about it with digital check-in is I can make those real-time, I can make those decisions. I can see, where do I have an empty seat? Or if somebody cancels in social tables, I can pull them off, and I'm like, now I have an empty seat at table 15. And then when a new person shows up, they're like, oh, sorry, I forgot to RSVP, but I really want to go. Great, no problem. Visually, I can see, I can add them to social tables, I can put them at table 15, and I can check them in all within like 10 seconds. If I was just doing name badges, or if I had paper lists, I don't have that ability. No matter how good you are as an event planner, there's no way you can remember all of those changes and still be dealing with all the other things you need to do. So having all of this information in one place on, an iPad mini or on your computer, it's just, it makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was trying to reenact a couple of those things on that iPad there. Because those are things that every single one of us has probably dealt with so frequently, and it's awesome to hear sort of how you're using that instead of just having me chat about it. Awesome. So, Joe, are there any other ways that you can think of that you might have, kind of leveraged technology? And I know you talked about so much. Just kind of curious if maybe there was anything else yet. Because like one of the things I've thought of, sort of like you were saying, is hey, is so and so here yet? It can save us a phone call, or it could save me potentially having to, wear a radio earpiece again.
I think yeah. I mean, the other good thing about the check-in is, if you have a large event, you can't see everybody who's checked in, and maybe they're all into the cocktail area, or they're already sitting in, and or maybe they're mulling into, they're walking into the ballroom, and no one ever just sits down, or no one, sometimes people just walk in and there's a whole mass of people. I might have somebody come up and says, hey, is Bob Smith, here? Has he checked in? You can go to anybody with the iPad and they can look and they can see in real time and say, oh, yep, he's already checked in. I don't have to run to 7 different, clipboards and lists and say, is Bob Smith checked in? And you're like, no, not on mine. And you go to the next person, no, not here, not here. And I always, you have that, when you have a paper list, you have something where somebody's put a check, or somebody's put a dash, or somebody's put a line through it, and I'm like, does that line through it mean someone canceled, or they are here? There's no guessing. It's real-time information that helps you run the event smoother and eliminates, any kind of questions or debate about somebody's actually here. That kind of information is really priceless.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you said that because my background, you're from the event side. I'm actually from the hotel side. So I've been your point of contact on the other end. And, taking guesswork out of the planning process is so important. That's something that, from day one working in a hotel, from an event management side or from a sales side, we always want to make sure that we're not selling the dream and servicing the nightmare. So having that, that little granular insight and being able to have that, that true data right there can make things so much easier, right? So it's fun to see how it kind of is true on both sides as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I really also want to emphasize, we touched on it earlier, that you might have a handful, 5 or 6 iPads, or maybe 3. I mean, depending, now that you have all this stuff in one place, you can check in people a lot easier. The impression that your attendees get, because it's on an iPad, is that your event is much more important than just a clipboard and a piece of paper. But you can really embrace the space. You don't have to have that check-in table. You don't have to have that long line. You're seeing this more and more as you go to airports or different venues, where you can have floating people to check you in, and you can really utilize that space in a different way, which is really like that first impression. So the fact that you can get rid of that long line, and that you can have people in various different places to check things in, it's a good way to start your event. So that's the first impression that they get.
Absolutely, and I've actually seen that carried over into the retail world too. Like we've all been to the Apple store and seen that, but I was at a Nordstrom rack, and they actually have floating cashiers who walk around with their little iPhone point of sale system. And someone just came up and was like, "Oh, hey, are you ready to go? I can ring you out right here, so you don't have to wait in line." Right? And we can kind of take that new age retail mentality and bring it into the event space, and be able to have more flow in that pre-function area, or be able to make it so much smoother for folks to get in the door.
Yeah, very much so. But and somebody whose background is database and accuracy in numbers, the fact that I don't have to guess how many people are here, you can take a look at a ballroom and you're like, oh, I think we're okay. I think a lot of people are here. I have real-time numbers right then and there. And it's nice because then I can go to the event lead, or the leadership of the event, or the the person who's opening remarks, and say, we have 400 people here tonight. It's accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to know, and that's a great way. And event technology, having everything digital, is a great way of doing that. Right? It's kind of like you said, when it's on paper, when you print it, it's out of date right then. Yeah. So we've actually gotten, Joe, we've had a couple questions roll in for us here. Okay. So we've kind of come full circle here, guys. So we've kind of made it through the door, so to speak. We've gotten past the check-in stand, and now we're in the event, so we can kind of you know, look back and see, hey, how was that experience? How did we do getting through the door? So if you have questions, you can always tweet us that hashtag AskST. You can also shoot me an email later if you want. But we have had a couple people who have actually who have actually asked a couple questions here. So let's see. Let me see here. Bear with me one second, guys. I'm going to start looking through. So we had a few questions roll in about using about printing name tags. So there is a name tag printing component of social tables. If you wanted to learn about that, shoot us an email or follow up with me after, put it in the chat tab. So for the folks that have asked, I'll shoot that email. Since we're going to talk more about the check-in side, I won't get into too much detail about how to actually physically do the printing. But basically, the long story short here is that yes, you can print. And it's basically as easy as just, when you're in there, kind of go and print, and then the name badges, and it'll pull out the organization name and that person's name, just like that. If you want to learn more about that, you can shoot us an email just to support@socialtables.com, or you can reach out to me. I'll be sending everyone an email to follow up after this. And if you'd like to learn more about that, just let me know, and we can chat about it. Here's a good one. So, Joe, Christina wrote in and she said, "What's your advice for nonprofits who have a strict budget but still have large events? What's your advice there when it comes to a situation like that?"
Well, the Milken Institute is a nonprofit as well, so I'm very well aware of budgets. I think you really have to take a look at the budget that you would spend on everything else that you would do versus your digital check-in. So how much time and effort are you spending, just in human capital? How many times are you rerunning that Excel list? Are you, managing all that information that you could have done prior into social tables and make it much easier? I think visually, to be able to see and show other people what the layout looks like is extremely helpful. For me, the easier I can make the event for my staff, I think that goes a long way, and I can kind of justify that budget. That they're not sitting here until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night trying to remove people around and do that kind of stuff. I think also for the digital check-in aspect, as a nonprofit, for your donors or your potential donors or your supporters or your sponsors, you're presenting yourself in a modern light, in a modern way, and it's how you're presenting yourself. You're not using 1996 technology. You're like, great, everybody has an iPhone, everybody has an iPad, everybody's online 24/7. So should you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. So Steve asked a question. Can you do check-in without an iPad? Sure. You can do it on your laptop. You can also do it on your iPhone. So we have the iPhone app and the iPad app. So you can use it on both of those devices. Deborah asked a question: is it possible to have several registrars to be in the same document on social tables? Absolutely. That's where we can use different folks on the app. Or I remember, Joe, when we were talking about sort of getting this whole thing planned together, you mentioned that in the green room or maybe behind the check-in booth, you would have a laptop there in case you did have any last-second registrations. When you type them in, it'll actually pop right into all of your folks' iPads or iPhones or laptops that they have set up. So Deborah, absolutely, yes, you most certainly can have multiple people on there. Let's see. So Anne asked a question: can social tables check-in integrate with greater giving for fundraising events and capturing credit card info for raffles and auctions? So currently, social tables is just more focused on the check-in side of doing the guest list. Now, when it comes to the overall credit card transactions, anything like that, that's not really our world. But you can manage literally everything that you would manage out of a guest list in Excel, or manage out of multiple systems, things that you'd be pulling out of Cvent and then putting it back into social tables, right? You can have access to all of that through those apps. So mostly, yes. All right. Julie asked, this is an interesting one, Julie. So Julie asked, do you have any options for event attendees to check themselves in? Here's my thought on that. Like, absolutely. What would prevent you from using, getting an iPhone or an iPad stand? They actually make these iPad stands that I'm sure you've seen at different conferences or vendors at a trade show using, or maybe even at a cafe they'll have little stands like. Let's see if I can find one. See if I can find a good example of it. But you could totally put something like this, right out front, and let folks scroll to check themselves in. The whole check-in process is really just as easy as finding your name and scrolling through. So it could be that could be a cool way. Joe, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know. That's the first time I've ever even thought about that. But what do you think about?
I mean, it can be done. For me personally, I think it's nice to have someone there to greet you, and that way you don't have to scroll through. If you have a big event, you have a staff member who can scroll through. But yeah, if you have a small event, or if it's just internal purposes that only, sure. I mean, why not empower them and show off the technology?
That's cool. That's like creating an interactive experience. I dig it. And Jackie just chimed in. Thanks, Jackie. They actually make standing kiosks for iPads too. Good to know. Awesome. So one question from Steve: can you have multiple check-ins for the same event? So, for example, doing main dinner check-in and lunch check-ins. Absolutely, that is most certainly a part of the program. It's really as easy right here. I'll pull my iPad back up for you. If you have multiple rooms, you'll be able to manage them right here. Currently, I'm only using one ballroom, but if I had more on there, then it would certainly have all of those spaces. So you could theoretically have 20 people doing check-in for 10 different events on property, or even 10 different check-in lists all over, and you'd be able to have visibility into all of them through the same app. All right, let me see if we have any other questions coming through. We got a whole lot, so I'm just trying to scroll through real quick, see if there's any left I haven't answered yet. All right, so I got a question from Samia. I'm going to pass this over to you, Joe. So the question was, do you have any recommendations for managing registration for trade shows or ticketed events? In my experience, I've used Eventbrite very successfully for selling tickets. From the trade show side, I know you're a little bit more familiar with Cvent. I believe you said you're a Cvent user, right, Joe?
Yeah, that's correct. We use Cvent for all our registration. We do about 200 events globally and on an annual basis. So, I mean, we're very happy, and love using them. They're extremely versatile. We're not trade show per se, but I mean, it handles all of our needs, and we are very diverse in the different types of events that we have. Sometimes it's a small 30, 50 person meeting, and then we have our large global conference, which has 4,000 people over 4 days. So I think you want to kind of weigh the differences, but when it comes to check-in, it's this app that makes it's nice and simple and easy.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree there. Let's see. Oh, good question. So Megan, she asked if you use Cvent as your registration system, can it still integrate with social tables for the actual check-in? So, Joe, what do you basically, once you're done with your registration via Cvent, what's your next step when it comes to social tables?
So at some point in time, we do export everything out of Cvent, and we have to import it into social tables. And then we can, and then if I need to, sometimes I might tweak that a little bit before I import it in. So if I have some notes, or if I know when I group people as I import it, I can do that. Or I can do it once I've imported it into into social tables, and then easily once the event is over, I can export that out and then update Cvent, which then updates the event, and it also we also integrate with Salesforce, so then it pushes out to Salesforce as well. I agree. I would love for all of this to talk and connect to each other, but maybe down the line. But for right now, there is that manual process of kind of pulling it out of Cvent and importing it into social tables.
Thanks, Joe. And Megan, also, if you're a social tables customer and you want to try playing around with that, feel free to, you can always call us or email us at our support line, and we're happy to set aside some time personally with you and kind of help you out, troubleshoot that, or kind of show you what that process is like. Importing it is really super easy. It's usually you can get something imported in a minute or less. And then the last, I think what we'll wrap up with here, just want to be cognizant of everyone's time. The last question I want to look at was from Deborah. So Deborah asked, what do you do if you have personalized programs that you have to hand to guests, though? Would that slow down the process? I know I've managed some events outside of social tables where I've used social tables where we will have special tote bags for folks, or an additional type of wristband that they get. And so basically what we do is we'll have those segmented out, and we'll use this note, like here, for example, Karis, I'll pull her out a little bit. I have that note there, so I know that, she gets 2 tote bags, or maybe she gets the specific personalized program. So that could be a way around it. If it is separated individually for each single person, that would be sort of a different process. Joe, have you ever done something like that where you get personalized programs to guests when they check in?
I don't think we've done anything personalized, but I will tell you that for some of our dinners that we use, we do have name badges printed up ahead of time, and so there is that table with all the name badges there. But we do spread it out, and we have the person who's with the social tables standing in front of the table, or they can also be behind. That way they can kind of really engage them, and as they check them in, then they can grab their name tag and hand it to them. So it's kind of a 2-step process, but you're still checking people in, and you're still having that high-touch experience, even though you're handing them the name tag. You're not just letting them come and randomly pick any name tag off the table, or not greeting them. So yeah, there's still that option to go through and say, oh, and here's your name tag, or you could put notes or any kind of alerts on as you check in. To you'll pick up your speaker packet over here and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's exactly how I used it at my event too. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with all of us today, and for everyone who dialed in, thank you so much for reserving time on a Thursday afternoon. I'm sure we're all kind of gearing up for an event later today or tomorrow. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time. Feel free to email me. I'm a resource here. If there's ever questions I can help answer, my email is justin@socialtables.com. Tomorrow I'll send out an email with a recording of this so we can all kind of have it handy if we ever want to look back. And like I said, we're here to help. So if there's ever questions I can run by you, or if there's ever anything I could run by Joe, just let me know. I'm always happy to help with anything you need. And Joe, once again, thank you so much. I'll give you a little bow. If you could see me, I would be bowing. So thank you so much for the time. I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I was happy to be part of it.
Awesome, everyone. Well, thanks again, and I hope we all have a fantastic rest of the week and an awesome weekend. Bye, everyone.